1.49. This is the highest rating ever achieved by an MVP at a Valve-sponsored major event. This rating is mind-boggling when you understand that on this stage, the lights can't be any brighter and the stakes could never be any higher. A rating this high can only be achieved by someone with enough experience to handle the pressure, along with the consistency to maintain it, being unrivaled by anyone else in the history of the game. Any guesses on who that player might be? It's not Zywoo. It's not Simple, though he holds the second highest rating with 1.47 at PGL Stockholm. It's not Device. It's not Coldzera. It's not Olaf Meister or JW or Flusha or Kenny S. Nope. It's not any of these guys. The holder of such a prestigious record is none other than a 17-year-old kid from Russia named Donk at the Perfect World Shanghai Major. And on his way to his record-breaking MVP, he was also named the youngest major MVP in history, finally dethroning Kiarbi in 2017, and even tied Simple for the most aces in a single big event. We will never see a major like Shanghai again. 2024 was the first full year we've had with CS2, and it ended the same exact way it started. A 17-year-old ruining your favorite player's hopes and dreams with his unrivaled ability to cha-cha slide. But the transitional period between CSGO and CS2 is creating chaos and changing everything right before our eyes. The widely regarded CSGO Simple didn't even qualify to the major, playing with legends like Dupree and Magisk, but somehow, a group of guys that have never played a top 20 team in their lives have made it all the way to the groups. This is the first year in history where no Danish players made the top 20. And speaking of the top 20, we have 9 players who have never been in the top 20 in any previous years. And Valve, on top of everything else, decided that they also wanted to change the rules of a major mid-tournament just because they felt like it. All of these things are happening because of how chaotic the adjustment to Counter-Strike 2 has been, and it's not going to stop there. Whether you like it or not, the Counter-Strike competitive scene is changing, and the game that we know and love is never going to be the same. And Shanghai is a perfect example of this. There are a million different storylines I can talk about this major, and if I were a normal channel, I would do something silly like sit in front of a camera with HLTV open and argue with thousands of people about how Device is worse at opping than Boomich and is on the same tier as Cirque. Thank you, Maui Snake. Very cool. But that's not how we do things here. Instead, I like to spend 4 months scripting and 3 weeks editing before burning out for half a year once I'm finished, and then repeating the process once the imposter syndrome goes away, and then I can start writing again. So this video, we're going to talk about the most recent major that took place in December, how we got here, and what the results mean for the future, and how will this affect LeBron James's legacy. There's a lot we have to go over, so let's just start with the team that hasn't ever versed a top 20 team, along with the question everyone is probably asking: who the fuck is Passion UA, and how did they get far enough to have stickers in my beautiful game, my dearest O Counter-Strike, my beloved, what have they done to you? To get to the top of this Passion UA situation, we have to go back like only a year. They actually haven't been around very long. Passion UA was created just over a year ago by widely respected Arsenal midfielder Alexander Zinchenko alongside legendary Na'Vi coach Kane, and they've since been playing in tier 2, tier 3 leagues online. Their only other LAN event as a team was a tiny local Polish tournament where they finished 3rd and 4th and won just over $1,000. You should note that this placement is also last place, and they didn't win a single map on LAN. Most of the time when you hear famous athletes and celebrities investing in esports organizations, they are partners investing in something their kids are interested in, like Rick Fox, or superstars who casually play CS for fun, like Neymar. Zinchenko, on the other hand, is a genuine CS grinder. My researcher Jack found Zinchenko's FaceIt profile, and bro was just 5-stacking late on a Monday night with his friends, just like any other degen. While playing professional soccer to the absolute top level possible, he grinded over 3,000 FaceIt matches and currently has a higher elo than me, and probably you. This guy would genuinely rinse most of us in a 1v1 aim red line. Earlier this year, he subbed in for an official and almost beat Bleed. There have been coaches who used to play Counter-Strike professionally and have looked worse than Zinchenko. But then again, there have also been some actual players who also looked worse. What this says about us as people, that a millionaire professional soccer player can find enough time to be good at this game, has yet to be concluded, but I'll get back to you when we figure that out. As for the main roster though, besides Fear, the team has absolutely no experience on a professional or semi-professional team before joining Passion UA, and they were playing in the last league season of EU Advanced, but they were literally at risk of getting relegated to main as they went barely positive in wins. However, poorly structured leagues may not matter after December, because at the one tournament that does matter, they showed up. Beating teams like Big, OG, Astralis, Spirit, and VP in the RMR stages, they look sloppy at times, but individually strong, which is more than we can ask from a team that could barely even be called semi-professional. It's two sides of the same coin to me. On one side, it shows you that this is how insanely competitive Europe is, but on the other side, it kind of just shows you that Counter-Strike 2 is random as fuck. Like, imagine if an NA Advanced team almost getting relegated went into a qualifier and beat NRG, Complexity, and no. No, not you. Jambo, particularly for Passion UA, shined in the clutch versus top teams, looking calm and composed like a veteran player, and I think they were pretty excited to make the major. For those of you who may be new to Counter-Strike, making the major is a huge deal for underdog teams, minimally salaried by their minimally funded organizations, because not only does it provide exposure for everyone involved, but it secures sticker money for the players, which depending on their contracts and how well they do, can be massive. Passion was not expected to contend in the opening stage, but credit where credit is due, Jambo and Fear put up impressive numbers. They give a really good fight in the opening stage before eventually falling to the only glimmer in the pile of shit ass that is North America, Wildcard, who much like every other NA team right now aren't even a majority American. Speaking of which, out of all the unlikely teams that dominated in the Dark Horse region, Wildcard emerged from the RMR with a 3-0 record and an impressive stat line alongside it. These performances weren't out of the ordinary for Wildcard, as all throughout the year they've been putting it together as a team and curb stomping the shit out of Tier 2 NACS like a group of NBA players showing up to your local rec league. What was more impressive was that they've been playing a lot of these matches with FaZe stuck in Sweden with visa issues, which further proves that European players, even on 150 ping, are still better than most North Americans. And I have to mention this guy, Sonic, who some may remember from the previous iterations of the Cloud9 ATK rosters. He actually retired in the waning years of CSGO because in a region this dead, who wouldn't? Like many others, he grinded in the lower tiers of the pro scene since 2015, and after years of falling short of making the major, he decided, like many of us, that it was time to give up on his dreams and return to where the money is at, the real world. AKA researching the stock market for years just to inevitably punt 80% of your savings on AMD calls over a gut feeling and lose everything you own. You know, the real world. But I digress. The narrative around Wildcard will of course be that against Tier 1 competition, they won't be able to put the same individual and team form together. But if there's any team untested against Tier 1 who has the potential to upset, it's the team in almost universally excellent universal form with one player stuck in EU universally. And they went 0-3 in the group stage. Never mind, boys. Better luck next major. Is this a sign that NACS is back? Probably not, but does it provide any hope for this godforsaken region? Probably not. If Passion beat Spirit and Wildcard beat Passion, but Spirit beat Wildcard, does that mean Passion is better than Passion? After hearing all this about Wildcard and Passion UA, you may be asking,
how did they do this?
How does two teams with almost no experience beat all of these highly accomplished teams that have players making more than most blue-collar full-time jobs? There's a case to be made that they were just better teams, and that's a very plausible answer, I guess. However, I think the switch between games forced everyone to adapt, which made a lot of the younger, more malleable players stand out more, while the older, rigid CSGO players are trying to pay off their second mortgage and take care of their children, who are probably beating them in scrims already. On top of the fact that best of ones are known to be a coin flip during majors, especially now that you win at 13 instead of 16, games are much shorter and require less consistency, which opens the doors for these less experienced teams to sneak their way in. Another team proving this to be the case will show its face a little later, but first we need to go over what is pissing off the community this time, as if that's a rare occurrence or something. Everyone's favorite consistent content creator, only after myself of course, OniPixel, who streams just about as consistently as I upload, randomly announced that he was signing a team that he will coach to try and qualify for the RMR and the major. The prospect of Valve adding a PNG of some dude's face in the game was very exciting, especially for the hollow and gold variety. Not very often do you see community representation like this within the game, and whenever you do, it always has nothing to do with the major. The only other cases, no pun intended, I can think of are the War Owl stickers and the 3 Clicks Philip music kit, and this was very obviously a collaboration with the community in mind. The underdog story of Drillas is huge, because the idea of a team funded and coached by a streamer making it all the way to the major is completely unheard of. It's not like Oni is a stranger to the esports side of Counter-Strike since he is always streaming and attending events, but this was a massive chance for the more casual player base to actually have a reason to engage with the esports side of the game. If the casual player base actually still exists after Valve tried everything they possibly could to kill it. Please fix surfing and b-hopping, and this new server browser still fucking sucks.
Why does alt tabbing take like 10 fucking years on my $1,000 computer? What are you doing in this game?
But what did Oni do to make everyone so mad? I want to preface this by saying, as much as I want this to be a shorter segment, it's only fair that I give all the context that I possibly can before you make any judgment towards the players and the team. You see, Drillas have 2 players from Ukraine and 2 players from Israel, and they went through the Middle Eastern RMR, even though their HLTV very clearly shows a European flag. This is thanks to one of their players having French-Moroccan citizenship, Haji. The player in question is one you might remember from his time with Envious Academy and then short stint with the main roster when Envy spent big on Scream and Kiyoshima and had to pick up XMS and Sixer before consequently running out of money and dropping everyone. This was such a beautiful time in esports. After Envy, Haji then played for Imperial and 3D Max and LDLC, And okay, the point I'm trying to get at is that he played in Europe for his entire 9-year career, but used his dual citizenship so that Drilla can play in APAC instead of Europe. They didn't break any of the rules by doing this, and Haji was absolutely within his right to do so, especially since he has the dual citizenship for a reason, but it still raised a few eyebrows considering how much easier the qualifiers are compared to Europe due to the fact that competition has been historically weaker. So Drillas would play the open qualifier where they defeat big name teams like Oreo Milkshake and Unlucky Much before losing to super fuckers in the grand finals. But they had already made the closed RMR, and in the lower bracket they won 4 best of 3s, including the revenge against super fuckers. Now the reason I read those team names to you at the beginning is because if you take a look at the European RMRs, well, this doesn't quite look like the same walk in the park now, does it? In the Middle East you get super fuckers and Nam Esports, but in Europe you get tier 1 organizations and former major winners and the guy who stole my name but got me a sticker in the game, so I forgive him. But if it were that simple, then there really wouldn't be any discussion around it. They were within their right to choose, and they chose the easier path, as would anyone else in this situation. However, the problem arrives before the RMR when Icarus flew too close to the sun, if that's even the right analogy for this situation. Probably not. Drillas announced that Saneri, their sub from Kosovo, replaced Amsalam, one of the 2 Middle Eastern players who was on the team when they claimed the APAC region for the RMR closed qualifiers. The reason everybody liked this a lot less is because this meant that the team had 3 players outside of Asia, a German coach, and 2 APAC players, including Haji, on the main roster. Well, now that they're majority European, they should be playing in Europe, full stop, right? Well, no, because Valve never stepped in to clarify, and this allowed them to use a substitute regardless of whatever region he was from. Now, I want to reiterate that they didn't break any rules, and I truly believe that the guys didn't mean for any of this to happen intentionally, but understand that intentional or not, this uncomfortably showcases an exploitation that teams can use to take advantage of a very small region that needs all the support that it can get. As history has shown, Asia is pretty used to Europeans occupying their territory, but we should still prevent it whenever possible if we can help it. Despite all of this, it didn't end up mattering anyway, as they fell 1 best of 3 short of making Shanghai, and you fell 1 best of 3 short of being able to put Oni's approving face all over your $400 skins. I'm personally unsure how much of the community outrage is actually because of the gap in Valve's rules or because big streamer equals bad, but frankly we should be more upset at Valve for letting this happen, since I'm sure Oni didn't plan on actually having to use a sub in the first place and he was just helping out a friend. But it's definitely Valve's fault for allowing the option they chose in the first place and not even stepping in to help find one player that would make them a real APAC team. Disqualification is also an option, even if it's a little nuclear. But since I live for a hot discussion, let me know what you guys think about the whole Drillas situation and what you think Valve should do about stuff like this in the future, or not. I don't really care. Live your life. Don't let some YouTuber tell you what to do. But since we're on the topic of failing to make the major, we need to talk about Falcons and Simple, because holy shit is this such an insane fall from grace. We just watched someone go from the greatest of all time about 2 years ago to not even placing in the top 20 in the matter of a single year, and it's all because he didn't like the game when it released. You used to be the GOAT, man. What is this? What are you doing? Falcons failing to qualify for the major wasn't necessarily surprising, so here's a quick list I made to refresh your memory with what they've accomplished this year. Yeah, that's about it. Without going too far off topic, and I promise this is relevant, if you haven't seen the movie Moneyball, it's about a general manager of the 2002 Oakland Athletics baseball team building a winning roster with 1/10 of the money than the best teams in the league. The premise is that they're trying to stay competitive by placing the right pieces around each other, while the richest teams just buy all the good players because they have the money for it. The reason I bring this up is because the Falcons, by contrast, are the exact opposite of the 2002 Oakland Athletics. Falcons have spent tens of millions of dollars on the world's best talent who don't even look like a tier 2 team when you put them together. I have seen North American FPL lineups from 2016 who could put up a tougher battle than Falcons, and one of them has Mo on it. Snappy and Modern aren't no-name scrubs either. Remember that in addition to Dupree and Magisk, the Falcons poached some of ENCE's best players to create this squad. Whether it was team chemistry, philosophy, or just the inevitable outcome for a team catalyzed with less desirable motives in mind, Falcons just never got anything going, and now the experiment is over. Alhamdulillah. Despite the fact that Dupree and Magisk are fighting for their lives on this Falcons roster, at least one of them is, Astralis are still losers after parting ways with them and still continue to get worse to this day, even though they recently just got 3rd at Cluj-Napoca 2025. I have a feeling this won't last. It's nothing against the players, I'm just manifesting the downfall of this organization. Even with Cadian and Device leading the way, and although the community and particularly Pimp have noted how this is emblematic of the crossroads the Danish scene is currently at, I don't know if anyone took it harder than whoever is running the Astralis CS Twitter account. So if you want to watch a version of Astralis that wasn't complete ass, I recommend watching my last video about their rise to dominance, but again, you're your own person, so you don't have to listen to me. As for the meat and potatoes of this event, I need to talk about another very important thing that's going to dictate the outcome and participants of every single major in the foreseeable future. So for those of you new to the scene and not actively watching r/global offensive crash out every couple of days, and whenever Valve releases an update for stability improvements, this is perhaps one of our longest and most dearly held traditions, being sad that Valve does not want to talk to us. Much like your ex-girlfriend, Valve has told us that it's not you, it's them, and their failure to communicate externally led to a breakdown in the relationship, and now they have to take some time to work on themselves. During the major, Valve demonstrated how they also have issues communicating internally, as somehow they and Perfect World weren't on the same page about how seeding would be decided for Shanghai. There have been situations in the past during the majors where teams that end Swiss stages with the same record would play a best-of-3 tiebreaker to decide a material advantage when seeding those teams in the subsequent round. Valve, before the Copenhagen major, outlined their new ranking system for the majors designed to prevent fluky teams from winning a lot of best-of-1s and making the major. And at the same time, they said it would just apply for Copenhagen and they decide in the future after. But months prior to Shanghai, they updated their rulebook to make this the official system going forward. However, instead of using the Valve ranking system to decide major seeding like they did in PGL Copenhagen, Perfect World for some reason still intended to hold these best-of-3 tiebreakers to decide seeding. Why it took until the last European RMR for Valve to notice this, I don't know, but they decided to do the only thing you're not supposed to do in professional sports, which is change/revert the rules mid-tournament, because this is Valve, bitch. Fuck you. We clowning this motherfucker. You better take your sensitive ass back to Riot Games. This had no effect on the first Europe RMR, aside from Cloud9 and FaZe playing a decider match for literally no reason. But for the second RMR, Berlin International Gaming, yes, that's what BIG stands for, went 3-0 in the Swiss to instantly qualify for the top 16 at the major, and they were absolutely psyched about it. These are the beautiful moments that we live and die for. Underdog teams locking in at big events and achieving the unexpected. And then on Friday, Valve said I'd rather just kill Big instead, and sent them to the opening stage instead of the elimination stage, which means they are set back an entire stage simply because Valve said so. And in their place, we got Spirit. Spirit had a poor showing in the RMR, going 3-2 and barely qualifying for the major, but will be rewarded for their excellent form this year overall, which, whether you like it or not, is exactly what Valve intended to do with this system. The Valve ranking system was put in place to counteract a flawed and chaotic best-of-1 format. But of course, usually when you intend to change an event you're hosting, you also tell the people who are hosting the event with you. It seems like in this case that communication was unsuccessful, but for what reason? Who the hell knows what Valve is thinking at any given moment. This is Valve, bitch. We cloud in this mode. The opening stage saw a few heartbreaks, a few triumphs, but it mostly played out as expected with a few exceptions. Most shockingly though, Mongolz dominated their Swiss matches, going 3-0, playing good, clean, and ethical Counter-Strike for a region as small as Mongolia, and the eye test alone shows how easy of a time they had, but for this reason, we'll be checking in with them just a little later. Liquid, on the other hand, are playing at their first CS2 major after missing out on Copenhagen, and also ran the table against slightly less impressive competition. Naf had a concerning performance through the opening stage, placing himself among good company with the bottom 10 players, such as Try and Somebody. So low on the list that HLTV forgot to name this dude. He's literally just somebody. Who is he? Throughout this whole year, Naf has been one of Liquid's key performers, especially in the late round 1vx scenarios where he's won 20 of 28 1v1s he got put in against top 20 competition. Liquid need their second star to be playing a little better than the worst 9 players of the stage if they want a chance to finally claim a title. A Gamer Legion almost unrecognizable from the underdog Paris major finalists showed up in Shanghai, besting other teams in form at the major and only dropping a series to the Mongolz, which, you know, is kind of understandable right now. Speaking of other regions in form, Kyoto. How am I supposed to read this? After a period of dormancy, Brazilian CS is fittingly back with a fallen-led Furia, young upstarts Pain Gaming, and legendary Orgame IBR all making it through to the elimination stages. There are a few players in particular you ought to keep your eye on, guys like Insani, who had a breakout year with MIBR and looked Donk-like in their opening stage run. But on Furia, Skulls had an incredible showing, making big play after big play to save Furia's momentum and get them over the line. Pain's Big Use era is usually the player in the headlines, but at Shanghai, young talents like NQZ and Kaez stole the stage, putting up great numbers and carrying the roster to yet another respectable placing after previously falling 2-3 in the elimination stage at Copenhagen. Good news for China is that the Shanghai crowd has been fantastic for the first stages, and in a very karmic way, the universe paid them back with a nail-biting best-of-3 win for Rare Adam against fnatic. I mean, look at all the fans filming the stage horizontally. This crowd is locked the fuck in. Listen to this pop-off.
Through. Oh,
But speaking of fnatic, I just want to mention that these guys have looked like a bunch of bums for as long as I can remember. Can we get Crims out of here, man? This guy made his debut with fnatic an entire decade ago. He is at this point one of the longest tenured pros in history. Since they've had Brolin, he's had practically nothing to work with. There's a reason why veteran contracts exist in professional sports leagues, and it's that teams know the massive value a veteran leader can provide both in clutch moments and the locker room. Having a dude who's seen everything and played everywhere is invaluable to a young group of players. But fnatic at Shanghai aren't even a young group of players. What the fuck is 28-year-old Body doing on this team? And why does this Mateus guy have such a long biography on Wikipedia? Did he write all of this by himself? Because not even dudes like Device have entries only a couple sentences long, and he's one of the greatest, most accomplished players to ever live. There is no world where I need to know this much more about Mateus than simple. Of course, merely signing a veteran player is not a guarantee of success, though. On the polar opposite side of this discussion, we have to talk about Elige, because he is a veteran, but only referring to him as such is doing him a large disservice. I'm unsure exactly what level of Dante's Inferno Elige is stuck in, in, or what unholy catastrophes he must have committed in a previous life to be stuck in the position he was in, and maybe he shaved his head so his hair wouldn't catch on fire playing in the hellscape that is complexity, but it is clear that bro was not having a good time. He was just named the 19th best player in the world without a single MVP or top 2 finish and only getting 3rd place at a single big event. By the numbers alone, he's had one of the best years of his entire career and would have definitely finished in the top 10 of 2024 if not for the fact that he restricted himself to the flaming pile of turd fire that is North American Counter-Strike. Exactly a year before Shanghai, Alic talked about wanting to bring a winning mentality to the struggling but talented complexity lineup, but they've since continued to struggle in the transition to CS2. Sort of like how Device wanted to prove that he could bring success to any team outside of Astralis, and we all saw how that turned out. We got more monitor smashing on NIP than he's had in his entire career. This mindset of being able to make any team in Counter-Strike better with your presence is nearly impossible to achieve because of how team-oriented the game is. I don't know if they're getting this idea from traditional sports where discussions are along the lines of, you can't really be the best until you win with the worst, but Counter-Strike is different in the sense that you can always be shut down individually, so joining a worse team with less chemistry will almost always be a death sentence. The sports comparison only makes sense if in basketball you could just blow up LeBron James every possession and he respawns with full health the next play, and if this were the case, I don't know if the Cavs would have won the championship in 2016, but it's still very funny that this holiday season, Alic started singing a different tune, a tune that went from, I'm gonna make complexity a winning team, to something like, actually, you know what guys, I think they might just be losers after all. The tune he is currently singing, by the way, sounds familiar, if not identical to the crescendo heard in Twist's storyline right before the guy won a major, so Godspeed my American king. This was an exciting opening stage thus far, but these young teams in form would have to prove their resiliency against powerhouses like Spirit, Na'Vi, G2, FaZe, and 3D Max, I guess? By the elimination stage, so many different storylines emerged. Nico's last ride with m0NESY and his cousin Nico as he confirms his transfer to Falcons after the major. Na'Vi in monstrous form looking like the final boss as they defend their title. Donk's second major appearance while Spirit are looking questionable. 3D Max being the first fully French roster not named Vitality to make the top 16 since French G2 at StarLadder 2019. And the Mongolz, who are by far the best Asian representation the game has ever seen. I think the Mongolz saw the elimination stage and really took that shit to heart, man. Another 3-0 in the Swiss stage, and I think it's finally time to yap about these guys for a bit. While writing this, I saw a post on Reddit depicting the road to pro for Mongolz, and now I kind of just want to kill all of them joined FaZe literally 5 years ago. 9-10 hit level 10 literally 2 fucking years ago. Most of them have played their first FPL games last year, and now half of the talent are predicting them to take it home in Shanghai. This Mongolz run is just unbelievable because of Asia's limited success in majors, because I mean shit, the furthest any Asian team has ever gotten was Tyloo placing second to last at FaZe 2018. So for a team of young players from a region with a player base that I'd imagine is not super large, for them to have more players representing Mongolia at the major than the fucking United States of America is both inspirational and demoralizing. But this can't be a video talking about the ever-changing landscape and the future of Counter-Strike without mentioning Spirit, especially Donk, once again donking all over the place and donking on everybody in the top 8, which is absolutely terrifying if nothing else. Donk's style and role is in some ways very reminiscent to Mao's Nico for you old heads, except Nico didn't have beasts like Shiro and Zontix dropping more than 110 consistently. Mao's Nico instead had Spitty and Dennis, but not the good pistol god Dennis from fnatic, I mean this Dennis. For this iteration of Spirit, Donk will always be the first player mentioned in post-game analysis, but I have to put some respect on Shiro's name. He's only 23 and he's been playing professionally since 2020, grinding the game for over a decade, and the sheer passion you see out of this guy in every interview and land clip is brimming. It is clear that Shiro, having broken out with the Gambit roster and later signing to Cloud9, realizes his role in the team as a second leader besides Chopper, who you should remember from that Vega Squadron lineup that insisted on ruining your 2018 pick'ems. Even in Shiro's interview with HLTV concerning, of course, Donk, his poise in refraining to discuss the fallout of Cloud9's disappointing CIS super team and his understanding of the IGL op relationship between himself and Chopper, all of these intangibles and maturity rubs off on other guys with high firepower but low composure in the arena. Since Katowice in 2024, Spirit has struggled to get it going on the main stage, but they're looking good headed into the playoffs, which is really the only thing that matters. And with Shiro yet to hit his full potential in 2024, Spirit will be very interesting to watch going forward. As previously mentioned, this major is ostensibly G2's last run with Nico, m0NESY, and the Mongolz core, and it is incredibly bittersweet because they are so damn fun to watch. G2 CEO spoke on how Mongolz' future for the team likely involves replacing Nico as a star rifler, and the decision to transfer Nico to Falcons is literally complete at this point. With G2 in the playoffs and Falcons having bombed out of the RMR and releasing everyone besides Magisk and Zonic for being terrible, I'm unsure of how binding any contracts or LOIs signed are. Surely with how fast the CS landscape changes, there must be some covenant that's like, in the case that G2 keeps kicking ass and Falcons keep sucking balls, G2 gets to bring back Nico. However, that's looking a little unlikely at this point, and I'll be damned if Nico didn't get his historical bag to put up with this shit, but also they've kind of looked good at the last couple of tournaments, so I don't know, maybe Falcons is on onto something. Maybe I should cut them some slack. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. Fuck Falcons. Back to the major, though. Liquid dropping an early best of 1 to Na'Vi have otherwise looked solid in the Swiss stage, passing with flying colors and a 3-1 record. Na'Vi, on the other hand, have looked anything but solid, ironically, except for when they played Liquid. Otherwise, they've completely evaporated and look like your average level 7s that you get in your FaZe queues. This is a somewhat familiar trend where teams who dominate prior to the player breaks get anti-stratted faster than they can develop new protocols, and after the break, that said team gets owned. But this is also Liquid we're talking about, where none of these things have ever mattered, since they are always going to inevitably fail somehow. That said, Na'Vi played like they hadn't touched their mice in weeks. It was genuinely really bad. This shit is hard to watch. By the end of the group stage, these were the quarterfinals that were set. Mongolz versus Maoz and Liquid versus Spirit on December 12th, with G2 versus Heroic and FaZe versus Vitality on December 13th. Or something like that, depending on wherever you live. Whatever the case, I'm going to go over what happened in these games and how these outcomes impacted these teams. God forbid you lose a major and you don't swap your teams around. Senzu in his 1.27 rating just disappeared on Thursday, vanished in a magician's trick. By the end of the day, 9-10 and Mizzino left Shanghai with the most preferable ratings and a very unpreferable 5th to 8th finish. Mizzino specifically showed up in the clutch. Techno 4K as well scored his major highlight, very suitable to his name, but Mongolz were 2-0'd by a far more playoff experienced Maoz roster. It seemed Europe's Counter-Strike hegemony would not topple today, as all 5 Maoz players went positive and just suffocated the Mongolians. But Maoz's T-side calling was equally brilliant, or Mongol's CT side equally shitty, and their resolve showed in the OT as they took the requisite 4 out of 6 with ease to win on Ancient. On Nuke was a similar story, Mongolz with a quick CT side start that they can't sustain under pressure, and after Maoz escaped with 5 on T side, Nuke was already over. Even though Mongolz triumphed in the clutch and first blood count over the series, Maoz's mid-round calls were on point, and the Mongols' dream run ended in the quarterfinals. Despite the loss, Mongols have proven themselves a phenomenal opponent, and they wouldn't make any roster changes and later go on to place 3rd and 4th at IEM Katowice 2025 and make the quarters of Cluj-Napoca, proving that this was not a fluke and are in fact a very competitive team. I expect them to be very threatening in Blast Austin, especially if they're willing to stick together as a team and build chemistry while other teams fumble about. Also, can we please stop asking Mongolians questions about China? It's so fucking weird.
One question for you. Does this feel like your home arena?
Yeah, I don't think so.
What do you think China built the wall for? I'll tell you, it wasn't because they liked Mongolia very much. On the topic of fumbling about, in some ways, arguably, Liquid played well in their best of 3 versus Spirit. Arguably, Liquid and Yakindar won the pre-recorded intro Aura competition. Many are saying the results don't matter after this. Stop the count. Arguably, Donk also happened to log onto the server for that best of 3, so Liquid stood no actual chance. A cool 1.63 over 2 maps boosted his rating for the major, and Donk basically took a dump on every Liquid player who wasn't named Twists. Though Liquid came out to a fast start on map 1 Anubis, they teetered off on their T side to end 6-6, which usually just isn't sufficient. It definitely wasn't sufficient against Donk, and on Dust 2, the Donk-Shiro duo brought Liquid to their knees despite Twist's objections. Against Spirit, it was just clear who deserved to move forward. Although he played decent, if not mediocre, this event would be the final straw for Liquid as they finally dropped Yakindar, who went from being a prodigy to holding back Liquid at several events within the last year. Liquid have opted to sign Nertz, who is one of the 2 remaining players from Heroic that didn't get bought out by Falcons, and Liquid up to this point remain as the most storied roster in NA to have never won a major. I kind of like the sound of that. Perhaps someone should make a video on it. Perhaps, methinks. Heroic at Shanghai, however, trounced G2 on Ancient. It looked terminal for G2, who only had Nico keeping them on life support, and it was long enough to revive Monacy, who came alive on map 2 Nuke after securing 5 rounds on T side. G2 were now in the driver's seat and slowly chipped away at Heroic's lead. By Mirage, Heroic was on the back foot, only with Dexter's repeated clutch attempts saving them from the embarrassing loss in regulation. But for every other clutch Dexter secured, it's either G2's 22-year-old superstar, or their 19-year-old superstar, or their 31-year-old superstar, I mean veteran, who won one back. I'll admit Snax's clutch doesn't look particularly pretty, but it is smart, and as we all know, sometimes being smart is actually better than being pretty. After being on life support, G2 and Dr. Malbs MD diagnosed Heroic with a terminal resolution, and Hunter, desperate to not go negative on this map, uses an old-fashioned boost on B-site Mirage to lock in Heroic's tragic fate and barely save his KD ratio. This would literally be the end of Heroic, as they would then completely sell their roster to Falcons, and now Heroic just have a bunch of guys from a few different teams, so I'm curious to see how well this roster does, but I'm assuming it'll already be better than Falcons in 6 months. I still got my fingers crossed, baby. I got my fingers crossed. Yeah, so FaZe versus Vitality was really interesting for a few specific reasons. Firstly, you had Considering the year Robs had in 2024, you'd be forgiven for thinking there were other important players in this best of 3, and that's okay, because I'm here to inform you that the only player who played in this series was Robs. It's incredible because before this series, Vitality led the head-to-head against FaZe approximately 1 million to 6, but we often forget how when CS2 dropped, Robs was actually coded into the Source engine, and FaZe was one of the best teams in the game. Eventually, Robs was going to find his form again, and damn did he happen upon it in a favorable time. But for some reason, I have a feeling that Vitality will somehow come back stronger from this, but I'm not quite sure why or how. So we open map 1 Nuke with a fantastic T side, playing to all their strengths on all sides of the map and letting Brolin roam for 6 first bloods. Hey Siri, shut up. Spirit just didn't have enough buffer on their T side to make it very competitive, as is the reality of MR12, especially with Torzi's tough 1v2 on pistol. But Spirit on T side, Ancient got out to a much better start, 9-3 at the half. This map was Spirit at their best, Chopper calling on point, good team play, and spacing on their executes, and usually Donk walks onto the bomb site at some point and kills 3. I mean, it's an elite strategy in modern day Counter-Strike, especially when you have other talented players liable to pop off on a few maps. Magic's on Ancient stole the show. Regardless of who plays well, it's also extremely difficult to play against a team who is willing to send a lurk up B at 50 seconds into a 3v3 and trust that you won't be bold enough to cut off their rotation from the bottom of Red Room. The Decider Mirage was yet again the Shiro and Donk show, which we really don't talk about this duo enough. They're pretty good. There's simply no round better to showcase how Spirit plays at their peak like round 16. I just gotta roll the clip for you. Down a man, half taking space in B apps and mid, letting Donk lurk out Palace and main to crumble the A defense. Even with Chopper missing a smoke for jungle and Exertion finding a perfect opening in T-spawn, it doesn't matter because CS2 peaks are nasty and Magic just reacts off Chopper and kills the B player panic rotating after seeing the bomb. This round was a disaster start to finish, and yet they managed to pull it off regardless. Spirit faltered under pressure at PGL Copenhagen, but it seems as if this time the pressure is an asset for them and send Mouse home. It's kind of unbelievable that even with how bad they looked coming out of the groups, the team most affected by the Valve ranking system seeding change ended up in the finals as if Valve scripted this major themselves. Mouse after this would end up benching Sui and picking up Spinks from Vitality's bench, and nobody really understood this move considering that Sui was their in-game leader and by no means was playing poorly, especially for IGL standards, but they did immediately make up for it by winning Cluj-Napoca in February, so shows how much we actually fucking know. You could argue that this event was less stacked because every team they played in the playoffs was top 10 or lower, but a trophy is a trophy, and I'd take 600k over nothing. Wow, if you thought FaZe's quarterfinal against Vitality was exciting, in the semifinals they just kidding, the rest of FaZe showed up this series too. I hit your ass with the double crossover. For someone who was thought to be one of the world's best when CS2 launched, Robs had a dismal year, and it's reflected in FaZe's very average placing. Off rip on Ancient, Robs and Brokey had things to prove, taking home a perilous 3v5 on B site. These dudes play retakes for sure. And speaking of Brokey, a few icy moments from him on this map, but he's had a not typical year either. G2 didn't seem to enter this best of 3 fully locked in, with some mistakes on Ancient allowing FaZe to stack early extra rounds, but time after time, the crucial kills that FaZe needed to convert rounds seemed to always come at the hands of Robs. He maintained this form in a map 2 Nuke where Rain, Brokey, and Frozen all showed up. In regulation, both teams put together 8-win CT sides to push the game into OT, and although it looked like for a second that Nico and m0NESY showed up enough to fend off the CS2 Dev and FaZe, after FaZe forced OT, they just looked too dominant. m0NESY, Nico, and Mongolz were largely absent in this series, and Nico will have to wait yet another year for a chance to lift a major trophy. Well, technically a year because this is in December, but it's not like a full 12 months. You know what I mean. That said, it's very clear in our and Nico's minds how good this G2 trio is, and as much as the community is rooting for Nico to join that hallowed club of major winners, time is running out and brother is getting older, joining a mismanaged organization with a lot of money but lacking a lot of passion and heart. Kerrigan, on the other hand, is showing the passion necessary to win and seeks his second major, as do Rain, Brokey, and Rops, and as for Frozen and all the Spirit players, they are playing in their first. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, for anyone who stayed up or woke up early to catch this final, the first 2 maps really put that sacrifice of sleep to the test. Each team handily took their opponent's map pick. FaZe just looked lost on Nuke, and Spirit only had 2 players playing on Ancient. Before we knew it, map 3 Dust 2 was on the cards, and to be honest, I wasn't quite sure how the tiebreaker for Nuke would end up looking like. Sometimes map 3 at a major finals is awarded map of all time status, and other times it's so boring and one-sided we just kind of forget that it even happened at all. Not that the first 2 maps were innately boring. Nuke saw Spirit work overtime after a 7-3 CT side half to get the opening victory. Particularly Magic on the CT side really kept Spirit in the driver's seat, and a clinical T side was required to quickly stack up those rounds post-pistol. With a win on FaZe's map pick, the stage was set for a 2-0 sweep, but Robs had other things to say about that and remind everyone that he literally made the game and knows how to play it. But when we talk about Spirit, our minds usually gravitate towards a specific player, and in this major grand finals, Magic's was right up there with Donk, almost literally a 2-man show going into map 3. I haven't seen ratings this lopsided since Simple and Flamey on Na'Vi basically 2v8 every single series. Magic's before today did not get enough respect on his name. It's common for professional HLTV ship posters to meme about Magic's only being on Spirit for vibe facilitation, Adaptation, but this week multiple threads echoed with calls to drop him from Spirit if they did not win the major. While he clearly had struggles individually, at the same time Spirit had struggles as a team, and he surely was not alone in these struggles. And I don't know, maybe part of those involves the best player dropping a consistent 1.3 when the team slumps. For a quick reality check, here are 2021 Navi's stats during their era. Surely the community in 3 months will be harping on Magic's dropping 1.03s in an anchor role, but for now he deserves his flowers, and Spirit does not win without huge plays like this.
That's it.
Back to map 3, Spirit put together a huge 8-4 half on CT side Dust 2 and extended that lead to 11-4 off the back of a pistol round win. Despite being down 11-4, if anyone knows how fragile a lead on a big stage can be, it's kerrigan and FaZe. Round by round, they refuse to go gently into that good night, absolutely raging against that light as they pull trick after trick out of their ass to take it to all 24 rounds. Perhaps a Spectre was present on the stage, a Spirit powering kerrigan against the opposing Spirit. Surely no one expected FaZe to make the ridiculous run that they did, and despite coming up short, they proved a lot to the community. Donk is just too good for most teams to handle. Dropping 30 kills and a 1.98 rating on map 3 of a major finals is fucking insane on its own, but when he's got Magix right behind him with 100 ADR, there's not much that you can really do about that. I talk a lot about giving praise to other players because everyone knows how good Donk is, but there's just not enough praise you could give to this kid. Donk at 17 in his first full year competing professionally, he's won 5 tournaments, earned 6 MVPs, overtook Kiarbi as the youngest player to win MVP after winning a major, and was named the #1 best player in the world all in 1 year at 17 years old. We all know how good ZywOo is, and for 2 years in a row in his first 2 years competing, he was also named the best player in the world, but imagine how good you have to be to overtake the chosen one and push him down to #3. FaZe's loss against Spirit spurred Robs to leave FaZe and join ZywOo on Vitality, which opened a spot on FaZe that got quickly filled by Alic, who might actually get a chance to win something now. But this also opened a spot on Complexity, who, yup, that looks like a North American move if I've ever seen one. Godspeed North American Counter-Strike, never change. But after all was said and done on that brisk December night, after a year of wondering if Spirit as a team had what it took to take home the big one, I only had one question left to ask, and it's actually a question that was meant for Fallen.
Essa que é a diferença do Shiro pra mim, vou falar a verdade, mano. Se sou eu, tô saindo matar os caras já, porque eu sei que meus amigos estão com medo, velho. O Shirão tá esperando. Aí ele pega o kill dele e fica bonito naquele t.org e os caras falam, grande Alper. Eu acredito na magia, mano. Não nos números.
It comes down to the 1v1. It's overtime. Denied. Regulation converted. This is their major. This is their history.
Obviously, I'm late to the party here with Shanghai, but I hope the video felt like it was worth watching. I'm living in a new place now, so hopefully that means I can actually start to focus on making videos, because I promise I really do love making these, and it's always just a timing thing that doesn't work out, and I'm gonna make it up to you for now. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you for clicking on my video instead of all the other videos on here. You don't have to, but leave a like if you enjoyed my content, or leave a dislike if you didn't. Either way, it helps me out a great deal. Subscribe or not, I don't mind, since it really doesn't bother me, because either way, I appreciate you for watching at all. And if you could hear this at all, I really do mean to thank you, and specifically you, for sticking around this long, and it really does mean a lot to me, and that support gives me the motivation to want to make more of these in the future. So if you can hear this, bless up, and I'll see you next time. See ya!